TIFU 1. TIFU by snooping through my parents' house while I was house-sitting. So I 22F have a sister 29F, and we've both known that we were adopted since birth. My sister now lives in another city, and I'm still in college, so I'm staying at our childhood home. My parents decided to go on vacation and leave me in charge of the house, and after a few days, I got bored. So I started snooping. At first, I was having fun. I went shopping in my dad's closet, basically took some vintage shirts that I knew he wouldn't miss because I haven't seen him wear them ever, and found a bunch of my deceased grandmother's jewelry and kinda went down memory lane. But then I decided to snoop through my dad's office and Reddit. This is where I fucked up. My dad has these locked cabinets in his office that I've never thought to look through before because I thought they just held like tax documents and boring adult stuff. But then I got curious about what actually he kept in there. These cabinets are locked, so I had to find the keys. Luckily, they were in his desk drawer. So the hardest part was matching the keys up to the correct cabinets. Opening the cabinets, I was right that most of the documents in there were boring adult stuff. There were tax documents and credit card receipts and blueprints for the house, etc. But then I saw a file labeled my sister's adoption. I started looking through it because I don't know much about my own birth mother, and I assumed that my sister probably didn't know much about hers either. There were a bunch of court filings, which is good, I guess, because it means my sister definitely wasn't kidnapped and low-key. That's always been a fear of mine. But there was also a bunch of paperwork stating my sister's birth mother and father's names and a bunch of medical history. I told my sister that I found these documents, and she requested that I take pictures to send to her. I initially refused because I didn't want to take the file out of the cabinet because I was scared I wouldn't be able to get it back in the right position and my dad would know I snooped. But I relented and took out the folder and started really reading the documents. And chat, this is where I really fucked up. On one of the documents, it stated that my sister, who I've grown up with for my entire life, has a full-blooded biological older sibling that was raised by my sister's birth parents. I did not know what to do. There was no way that my sister knew because I felt like she would have mentioned it. And it seemed insane to think that our parents would not have mentioned it in the 29 years that they raised my sister. I did not know what to do. Do I tell my sister or pretend I hadn't seen it? I decided that if I didn't tell my sister, I was no better than our parents who fully lied to her for her entire life. I FaceTimed her and started out the conversation, asking if she remembered who her matches were when she took her ancestry test. And she said that she only matched with an aunt who confirmed that my sister was her sister's child, and then promptly proceeded to ghost my sister. I then told her that she has a biological sibling who is 3 years older than her, and told her the sibling's name. She didn't believe me until I sent a picture of the document stating that she had a full-blooded sibling. She took it a lot better than I expected, but I don't think either of us have processed this yet. TLDR, I snooped through my parents' house while they were on vacation and accidentally discovered that my sister, we were both adopted from different bio-parents, has a biological sibling who was raised by her bio-parents, and my parents had kept it from her her entire life. TIFU by accidentally convincing my roommate we're getting married. Alright, so a little backstory for context. I moved in with my roommate about a year ago because the rent in this city is ridiculous, and finding a decent roommate was like winning the Hunger Games. We clicked super fast, same sense of humor, same obsession with Thai takeout, and somehow we never fight about cleaning. A miracle, honestly. Last night we were chilling on the couch, watching this cringe rom-com. One of those friends to lovers plots where everyone knows they're gonna end up together except them. I was feeling extra goofy and blurted out, "Yo, we should just get married. Like, why are we wasting time?" He laughed, so I thought it was just a vibe. Like platonic banter, you know? Fast forward to this morning, I'm half asleep in my hoodie, face deep in coffee, and he walks in with the most serious expression holding a bread twist tie. My guy had turned it into a ring. He goes, "So were you serious last night?" I nearly choked on my coffee. Like, sir, what? I thought we were joking. My brain just blue-screened while he stood there all hopeful. I panicked, laughed it off, and mumbled something about needing a real diamond if we were going to do this right. Now I'm low-key avoiding him because IDK if he's embarrassed, mad, or planning our wedding. It's awkward AF. TLDR made a dumb joke about marrying my roommate, and now he thinks I was serious. TIFU 3. TIFU going to hospital. My much longer hospital-related post reminded me of what had happened in August, when I similarly ended up being admitted with acute pancreatitis caused by my gallstones. The lovely ambulance crew arrived pretty quickly after I called 111 and grabbed some pajamas off the washing pile to head off in the ambulance. As I only had a t-shirt and knickers on, they dropped me off in the ER to get assessed, and it was, as ever, busy, but there was a fair turnover of people too. I wasn't paying a great deal of attention as it was the early hours of the morning, and I wasn't paying tired and in pain. At one point I fell asleep. I'm not sure for how long, but my concern was, what if my name had been called and I missed it? As I was worrying over this, I saw that the queue by the reception desk had vanished for a few minutes. I took this opportunity to go over and ask, as I really wasn't up to standing in a queue. I made it across the busy waiting room and stood at the window, and the receptionist smiled in greeting. I started, "I'm sorry to bother you, but..." And then my trousers fell down. I had grabbed my oldest pajama bottoms that I keep intending to throw away as the elastic has gone from the waistband. I managed to grab my trousers and carried on as if it had never happened. I didn't look behind me. As it was, I hadn't been checked in even though the guy monitoring ambulance arrivals said I had. They got me checked in double fast, triaged and admitted. I even had a room to myself for the day before I moved to a ward. But I spent the few days I was there desperately grabbing for my trousers every time I stood up. TLDR went into hospital by ambulance, but put on the wrong trousers and ended up showing my knickers to a packed waiting room. TIFU by getting off before work. It's Friday. I don't want to be at work. I don't want to be out of bed. But can't miss work, so I needed some type of dopamine to get myself awake. Hence, I decided to get myself off. Was solid, no penetration. Just a quick get there. The second I climaxed, I had the most earth-shattering, spine-breaking pain shoot up my abdomen. Now multiple hours later, I am at work, limping and cramping, and dealing with the cramps from absolute hell. So now I'm in pain, at work and awake. Just the trifecta of suckage for this Friday. And I can't even complain to anyone because how do you walk up to your friend and say, hey, I orgasmed too hard and now my tummy hurts? This seriously makes every period I've ever had feel like light work. I have been cramping and muscle spasming for 9 hours now. Everything hurts, and it truly and genuinely was not a good enough orgasm for this. So today, I truly fucked up. TLDR came too hard, now everything hurts. Update, I'm okay. I made an appointment to see a gynecologist. After getting home, I was able to take a hot bath and sleep. The pain is basically gone now, just some muscle soreness. TIFU by wearing socks. So this wasn't today, but back just before Christmas, and my gallstones had given me acute pancreatitis. Again, so I ended up in hospital again. Last time was back in August. This time, the pain in my abdomen was interfering with my breathing, which exacerbated a chest infection, and one of my lungs just noped out and collapsed, which was great and not what anyone was expecting. I ended up on oxygen and nebulizers and was in for 3 weeks total. I've still got my gallstones, of course. Hopefully, I'm getting them removed before they try anything else. Anyway, I ended up in hospital pretty unexpectedly, and for longer than anyone thought. Luckily, my sister was able to come down and take my keys, and she went back to mine to pick me up everything I needed and feed the cats. One of my daughters also came to see me and bought me a load of new knickers, 2 new sets of pajamas and some fluffy socks. She even brought me snacks and soap and shampoo, etc. Other people were lovely too, and I had 2 separate Amazon deliveries from different people delivered to my bed. My sister also came and helped out, and my eldest took my cats to stay with her. People are great sometimes. I'm very grateful to all of them. I started feeling a bit better towards the end of my 2nd week in and was getting used to having to get hold of a spare oxygen tank just to go to the loo. One evening, I was doing just this. But I'd got out of the other side of the bed than usual and couldn't find my Crocs. The floor was cold and I wanted to be comfy, so I grabbed the lovely new fluffy socks from the chair that I was using as my wardrobe. Excellent solution, I thought. Then I stood up. Or tried to stand up. You know, in Bambi, where they go skating on the ice, only Bambi's legs go shooting out from under him, like a starfish. That's what I did, only with considerably less grace. My legs both went in opposite directions, and happily my knees hit the floor before I split in 2, like Rumpelstiltskin. Not entirely happily, though. I whacked my left knee very hard, and my right knee did something bizarre that felt horrible, and something went pop. I managed to get myself back on the bed, and luckily no one saw my downfall, as the curtains were mostly drawn around my bed. The lady opposite heard me hit the floor and say, "Fuck," really loudly though, and asked if I was all right. Sitting back on the bed, I did seem to be okay. My legs both still worked, which made getting the socks off a damn sight easier for a start. I still needed a wee though. I very cautiously made my way over to the toilet in my bare feet, and got there and back unscathed. I told one of the nurses what had happened the next day when I was still in pain and my right knee gave way, trying to go from sitting to standing in the bathroom. I ended up having both knees x-rayed and MRI'd, which I added to my total of 1 chest x-ray, 1 MRCP of my abdomen, 1 CT scan with contrast, which was very weird, and 1 unrelated neck MRI that I happened to be booked in for previously. I should get frequent flyer miles or something, or at least a sticker each time. I made it out just before Christmas and had a quiet festive season where I did a lot of restorative sleeping. It was lovely being home, and my sister and daughters organized having my house cleaned before I came back, so I didn't have to do anything. Best Christmas present by a mile. I had my app to review the MRIs last week. I've torn the ACL in my right knee. They don't often do the reconstructive surgery on people my age, it turns out. The cheeky monkeys. I'm only 59, so I'm going to have physio and go back in 2 months to see how it's doing. If it's still being unstable, it's given out on me 3 more times since I did it. Then they'll reconsider the operation. If they do, I'll ask if they can take my gallstones out too. TLDR, don't wear fluffy socks on shiny floors unless you are agile enough to do controlled skids like Tom Cruise in Risky Business, especially if you're over 50 and want to keep using your knees. TIFU TIFU by asking someone to give a letter to a dead person. It wasn't today. It was a few years ago, but it still haunts me. One important thing about my city, we have a cemetery that has the same name as the street it is on. I did not in fact remember about it that day. You probably know where this is going. When I was 18-19, I worked part-time as a mailman. I knocked on the door of one of the apartments and a man opened the door. I had a letter for a woman, so I asked if she was home. He answered, "She is on name." Me, thinking of the street name, asked him if he could give her the letter when she comes back. He just glanced at me and signed the acknowledgement of the receipt in silence. I thought it was strange that he didn't even answer, but I shrugged it off and gave him the letter. But the moment I left the building, I realized he meant the cemetery, not the street, and his reaction was caused by me asking to give a letter to his dead family member when she comes back from the dead. TLDR, I thought the woman was on the street, but she was on the cemetery. TIFU by sending a Harvard-educated lawyer training materials with a yo mama joke in them. So I 25 metri am in between jobs, and so am working for my dad's firm, doing a lot of paperwork I am qualified to do. I am a STEM person with a ton of programming experience, so I am really good at helping them figure out more efficient ways to fill out forms or letters that are very repetitive. I also have a few professional tests under my belt, so I can do a reasonable job proofing financial transactions, just checking for math or spelling errors basically. Nothing too crazy at all. A huge part of what I am supposed to be doing is generating training materials for all the odd jobs I know because they never really built up materials, and now that they are expanding, they don't have the same time to train each person one-on-one. To help out, I generated a bunch of example legal paperwork that we can show trainees without having to show everyone client information. When I was first generating this information, I thought only my dad would look over the first draft, so I thought I would come up with funny names and addresses for the example clients, such as Yo Mama's House being the address of a dummy firm. My dad chuckled at it and said it all looked great, and we moved on, and I meant to go back and fix some of the more stupid things later. But I got caught up with my more serious work. We have recently hired a new Harvard law grad, and I sent her the training docs so she could quickly train on what I help with. She will probably have to do it every once in a while. But right after I sent it, I realized I had forgotten to fix the egregious errors. I have been worrying about it for 3 days now, and I have to meet with her next week to review the materials. Bruce Wayne and Jarvis Stark are some other names I used for example clients. TLDR made some aggressively silly training material, meaning to make them more professional later, but forgot and sent them as is to a Harvard-educated lawyer. TIFU Odd. TIFU by creating an alter ego as a bit, and this alter ego now shows up on my credit report and background check. So technically it was not today, but today was the day I realized how extensive the issue is. To back up about 10 years, I created this fake persona as a joke to fuck with my boss at the time, who had a good sense of humor but insanely gullible. He was frantically trying to hire for a sales position and wasn't getting any applicants, and said I'd hire about anyone right now, so I said okay. I created this ridiculously outlandish but believable resume with a bunch of funny titles and job responsibilities for this southern redneck named Ricky, who was the assistant to the VP of local janitorial operations at Chuck E. Cheese, a semi-retired rock star who liked to play at the bars and an ex-pit stop mechanic for Dale back in the day. I created a whole crazy backstory on a cover letter and applied for the job, but made it sound almost believable. I even went as far as to trim my beard down to a Hulk Hogan stash, and I have this mullet wig I used for a Joe Dirt costume in middle school and sent him an email a few days after applying, with a really cringe candid headshot my girlfriend at the time took and sent it to him. In the emails, told him I was going to roll up to the office soon, on the spot for an interview, because he would have been stupid not to hire me. He had no idea it was me, so I started fucking with him even more and calling his office phone doing my deep southern accent. Not hard because I grew up in the South and have an accent in me. So I basically drop my voice an octave and do a Blake Shelton impression. Haha, and telling him I was ready to work, and he was mildly concerned this weirdo was going to show up one day. I told absolutely nobody I was doing this, and was dying hearing him talk to colleagues about this weird dude who keeps calling him. Then, on a Friday before a holiday, I came into the office with the wig, stash, jean jacket, my boots, and an Ozzy Osbourne shirt I found at Goodwill and kept in character for most of the day. The rest of the company found out about this and thought it was the funniest thing ever, as did my friends and family, so it became kind of a bit and evolved into this redneck alter ego thing. We had this office that was repurposed as a storage room. Nobody went into, and they put a nameplate on the door for Ricky. And from what I understand, that was Ricky's office for several years, even after I left. From there, I created a Facebook page, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, etc., over a period of several years. I'd just post stupid shit here and there like crazy redneck stories he had in horrendous grammar, random YouTube videos, and just random stuff. It's become like a lore at this point, and I've just kept it going because I've had fun with it. My friends will contact me and say, "What's old Slick Rick been getting into these days?" And I got really proficient at Photoshop, so I'd put him into pictures and create a funny backstory as to how he got there. He will absolutely be in attendance front row the inauguration in a few days somehow. And I've put out a couple songs in his voice where I played the guitar intentionally shitty and did a diss track a few months ago. I literally learned how to play guitar decently so I could intentionally do it slightly off tune, haha. It has been really a good way for me to connect with a lot of my friends in different places. I don't see often anymore and makes me happy. I know it makes them smile. It got to a point where it started to overlap, and I let the hillbilly hell raise in energy carry over into my daily life a bit and can flip the accent on and off, haha. I work as a sales director leadership position at a software company. Now that's pretty high stress. Sometimes, so it's almost like an outlet where I can tune down my IQ a lot and just do stupid shit and not take life so serious. Nothing wrong with bringing a little laughter into people's lives, and I still think it's hilarious making stuff up for it. His slogan is mopping floors, drinking Chores. I bought a C8 Corvette a few years ago and really played into the trailer park Ferrari jokes, haha. But it makes me really happy. This stupid ass bit brings laughter to the lives of people I care about a decade later, and I literally cackle when I create stupid ass scenarios and posts for him. I'll go look through them sometimes, and I'm like, how the fuck did I even come up with that? Anyways, I started using his namesake for random things, burner emails, things I don't want to sign up for using my name, referrals for services, etc. Basically, I signed him up for everything I didn't want to, or as an extra account legally, that doesn't require a social security number. Ol' Ricky has a shit ton of Starbucks rewards, that's for damn sure, lol. This was all fun and games until today. My wife and I are currently trying to sell our current home, and we put in an offer that was accepted this morning. When working with the lender today, I have a credit monitoring program, and I called and asked a few verification questions since I have my credit, and one of them came up and asked for known associates, and Ricky last name came up, and I was like, what? After looking at my credit report, when my wife and I got married 2 years ago, we ended up renting out her home to this really kind older gentleman who still lives there. However, on not only my credit report, but my wife's, it shows Ricky as the tenant and a known associate on background checks and searches. It also shows him as a co-tenant at a corporate apartment I rented 5 years ago at every credit agency. He apparently even shows up in his own background checks minus a social. I'm assuming this is due to data mining shit, but this is specifically problematic because when I brought this up to our lender and said, that's a problem as we intend to keep the rental, somehow our actual tenant doesn't even show up for them, and they just see Ricky. That was very difficult to articulate. Ricky is someone who doesn't exist, but when have an actual renter who does exist, but doesn't show up as a tenant, other than the lease documents we have. TLDR. I made an alter ego as a joke 10 years ago and made it a running bit and started using his namesake for extra rewards, accounts and things. Now he shows as a tenant on my wife and I's credit reports and will potentially prevent us from buying our dream home. TIFU 9. TIFU, I've put my whole program and everything I've worked for on the line. TIFU disclaimer, I've been messing up for a while, but today it came to a head. I'm social worker and I work for small program. I am several months behind on clinical notes. Every day I juggle 2 different roles that I can't find time the day to write notes. For context, I am responsible for case management and individual therapy for clients with mental health and substance use disorder. I've been disorganized and overwhelmed, and every time I try to write notes, I'm exhausted and overwhelmed. When I work late or go to work early, I'm told that I shouldn't be working this hard and to take a break. And in the same week by the same boss told to boost admissions. I'm not really supposed to work overtime. And they frown on doing any work at home even though my office is very distracting, especially since I'm using limited furniture and storage space in my office. My clinical supervisor has been aware since the beginning and always tells me not to worry and he'll go to bat for me. And he's told me to not tell our supervising officer. But I've also been covering most of his caseload for the past year while he's been out for FMLA, vacation and family illness. Everything I've asked him to help me stay onto of deadlines or take referrals while I catch up. He still passes clients off to me and lectures me about self-care after about 2 weeks. Today, the officer who oversees the program realized I didn't get some notes in on a high acuity client who denied most help. And now he's potentially coming back to the program. She's worried that we're going to lose funding and the program will shut down. TLDR, I've been overwhelmed to keep up with essential tasks at work, and everything I do to try and ask for help never seems to work. Now my job and the whole prom is at risk of being shut down. Edit, I cleaned up typos and tried to change some details as to avoid disclosing where I work, and wanted to add more context after reading more comments. I have a TBI that resulted in dexterity issues, hence typos. I have disclosed this to all my higher-ups. I also have discussed getting a transcriber in supervision, recently purchased an AI software, and disclosed to my supervisor recent recommendations from neurologist. I'm writing this to really just say thanks everyone for helping me zoom out. TIFU 10. TIFU by letting my cats chase a mouse into the toilet. So last night around 10:30 p.m., I-58M was chilling on our 10-acre farm in North Texas, where we raise Angora goats, donkeys, some LGDs, and a ton of cats. Our place is surrounded by massive farms growing feed corn, winter wheat, and sorghum, which means we're also home to a buffet of rodents. Thanks to our feline squad, our house, shop, and barns are usually rodent-free zones. But last night, my indoor cats were on a mission. They spotted a chunky mouse about 4 or 5 inches long that darted under the couch. My favorite black cat, the least effective hunter, was more of a spectator, letting the mouse play hopscotch over him. Meanwhile, my orange cat, the real deal, was trying in vain. I was zoned out watching a new podcast when my stomach decided it was showtime. Zombie mode, I shuffled past my cat duo into our bathroom, phone in hand, and barely made it to the toilet when, relief. But then, chaos. I'm sitting there, feeling the sweet release when I hear a splash and feel something banging around near my coin purse. Next thing I know, I'm jumping like I've discovered the fountain of youth, thinking I could have dunked a basketball for the first time since '87. Turning around, I see this mouse, looking like he's trying to escape from a horror movie, all covered in what can only be described as an ungodly chocolate storm. I'm naked at this point because why not? I threw my pants off for mobility, and my shirt because apparently I thought this was going to be a naked fight for survival. After the shock and a bout of hysterical laughter, I realized the mouse was hurt and struggling. I managed to rescue him, sparing you the gory details, but let's just say he didn't suffer further. My wife was at my mum's house, taking care of my mother who does have some minor memory issues. She had a good laugh for a solid 10-15 minutes when I called her this morning, and our mums found the story equally amusing. Hope this made you laugh as much as my utterly useless black cat was probably laughing at my expense last night. TLDR. My cats chased a mouse into the toilet while I was using it, leading to a surprise attack on my rear and an unexpected naked rescue mission. TIFU I've. TIFU by trying to be a hero and accidentally locking my dog in the car. I decided to be a good Samaritan today. I was at a local store, and I was leaving. I noticed an elderly woman struggling to load her groceries into her car. She had a cane, and it was clear she was having a hard time. I thought, I got this. So I rushed over to help her out, and I ended up loading her bags into the trunk while she carefully got in the driver's seat. I felt pretty good about myself. Now, here's where I messed up. While helping, I left my own car running with my dog, a very excited husky, inside because it was a warm day. I thought I'd be in and out, but of course, the old lady started chatting with me about her grandkids and how she used to visit the place with her husband, so I lost track of time. When I finally turned around, I saw my car was locked, and the dog was locked in with the keys. So there I was, standing in the parking lot with my dog freaking out inside the car, the elderly lady asking if I was okay, and me trying to play it cool. Long story short, I had to call a locksmith, and the whole time my dog was giving me the "really, Mom?" look. Meanwhile, the elderly lady was still chatting away, blissfully unaware of the disaster I'd caused. TLDR tried to be a hero by helping an elderly woman and ended up locking my dog in the car with the keys. Had to call a locksmith and wait in humiliation. TIFU I've. TIFU by trying to be a hero and accidentally locking my dog in the car. I decided to be a good Samaritan today. I was at a local store, and as I was leaving, I noticed an elderly woman struggling to load her groceries into her car. She had a cane, and it was clear she was having a hard time. I thought, I got this. So I rushed over to help her out, and I ended up loading her bags into the trunk while she carefully got in the driver's seat. I felt pretty good about myself. Now, here's where I messed up. While helping, I left my own car running with my dog, a very excited husky, inside because it was a warm day. I thought I'd be in and out, but of course, the old lady started chatting with me about her grandkids and how she used to visit the place with her husband, so I lost track of time. When I finally turned around, I saw my car was locked, and the dog was locked in with the keys. So there I was, standing in the parking lot with my dog freaking out inside the car, the elderly lady asking if I was okay, and me trying to play it cool. Long story short, I had to call a locksmith, and the whole time my dog was giving me the "really, Mom?" look. Meanwhile, the elderly lady was still chatting away, blissfully unaware of the disaster I'd caused. TLDR tried to be a hero by helping an elderly woman and ended up locking my dog in the car with the keys. Had to call a locksmith and wait in humiliation. TIFU. TIFU by committing a hit and run. I'm 17M, recently licensed, and was driving around town to apply for jobs. In a parking lot, I bumped into someone else's car, and there was a dent and scratch on it, no damage to mine. Suddenly, the fear of my already ridiculously high insurance being raised and my mom finding out and giving me hell pay soared through my mind, and I drove off. I immediately knew I fucked up, but was too scared and ashamed to face the consequences of my own actions. I drove around and continued on applying at places, and I happened up back in the same parking lot of the shopping center. One of their security cars had their lights on and was just sitting there. I drove to an exit to carry on with my route, and they pulled up behind me. At this point, I was beyond paranoid, but didn't know if they were trying to get my attention or not. So I pulled out of their parking lot to see if they'd follow me, but they turned the opposite direction. I then realized they could have been getting my plates, and I started freaking out all over again. I'm terrified of what's to come, and I'm ashamed to admit I hope I get away with it. I feel horrible for what I did. That person definitely doesn't deserve what happened to their car, and I do deserve the consequences. But the fear of it has me praying that I get grace this one time. If something happens, I'll report back here. TLDR, I had a minor fender bender and drove away from the scene. Now I'm paranoid of what's to come. TIFU I've. TIFU by getting high, then going to a school event. Edited, because y'all flaming my spelling TIFU by going to my sister's basketball F15 game high ASF. So me 17 hours had to go to my sister's basketball game, and I didn't have wrestling practice that day, so I decided to get high with my friend's wax pen. I took 3 hits, and I was gone for a while. We left and went to my sister's game that was at a different high school that I'm switching to my senior year. So we get there and the game is over. My little brother runs into a locker room, I chase after him, and eventually I get to him and pick him up, walking out. And the principal of said school walks up to me, pulls me aside and says, "Sir, how old are you?" I say 17 years old, and then he's like, "What school I go to?" I say my school, and then he's like, "You know that was a girl's locker room, and mind you, I'm 6'5", 250 pounds, and I'm black, so I all look old. And like I mentioned earlier, I wrestle, so I'm big. Anyways, I'm so scared because I'm going to that school in like a month, and I don't want to be known as the guy who goes into girls' locker rooms before I even go to that school." TLDR, I got high with some friends, went to a game, ended up in the girls' locker room. TIFU pens. TIFU by getting scammed out of my life savings and becoming a big fool. It all started when I got this call from someone claiming to be a senior manager from FedEx. They told me that customs had seized a package going from Mumbai to Bangkok, and apparently it contained 6 passports and a few $1,000s. I was totally lost because, of course, I hadn't sent any package anywhere. But the person on the phone just kept pushing and said my Aadhaar number had been used for this illegal shipment. They threatened me with legal consequences if I didn't cooperate. Next thing I know, they told me they were transferring the call to the cyber police to verify everything. By this point, I was freaking out. The person pretending to be the cyber police said my bank accounts had been hacked and that more fraud was coming my way unless I acted immediately. The officer then said I needed to transfer money to a so-called alternate account that supposedly belonged to the Reserve Bank of India to protect my funds. Totally panicked, I went ahead and transferred 2 lakh. Then, under more pressure and fear of losing funds, I sent another 3 lakh. He then asked me if I had more balance left, to which I mentioned I had 2 lakhs more, but he said if I don't transfer all the funds, then that will be lost as well, and told me to choose wisely and not be a fool. I didn't have any time and went ahead with the balance 2 lakhs transferred too under pressure. After that, the scammer said I'd been a good obedient boy, and I could relax now and take it easy. Did some counseling for me to help me relax a bit more and left the call, saying he will be back to help with the funds I had just transferred. But then, nothing. The scammer went silent and did not call back and did not pick my calls, and that's when it hit me, I had just been scammed. I'm feeling so dumb right now. I've already reported it to the real cyber police, but honestly, I'm desperate. I just want to know, what are the chances of me getting that money back? Do banks offer any protection against scams like this? And is there any legal way for me to get my money back? TLDR, got scammed out of my life savings. Don't think there is way to recover the amount now. TIFU Sexter. TIFU by getting too relaxed on a crowded bus, got pickpocketed, undressed, and lost my belongings without a clue. I wanted to share my experience in case it helps others avoid a similar situation. This morning around 9:30 a.m., I was on a packed DTC bus en route ISBT Anand Vihar when I became the victim of a well-orchestrated theft. I lost my Samsung Z Fold 6 and Samsung Ultra watch worth over 2 lakh rupees to these master pickpockets. A fat uncle, dressed in formals, large build, looked to be in his late 40s or early 50s, I noticed, came and stood behind me in a crowded, packed bus, and I barely had space to hold on to anything, and he kept pushing me and eventually put his hands on my shoulder. I told him to hold on to some support, but he said there was no space, and to adjust for a bit, I told him he can hold on to the bar beside him, to which he said kids these days have no respect for their elders and can't even adjust. What a shame. I apologized to him and let him be. He then apparently dropped something and squatted down next to my feet for a min and felt him touching my shoes. I couldn't turn and see what was happening. Later, he tried engaging me on some small talk, but I ignored him. After a while, the crowd increased further, and another guy came and squeezed me from the front at next stop, and my hands became stuck holding the support, and I could not move them. This is when I felt a weird sensation around my waist and belly for a good 5 minutes. I couldn't do anything, but felt something weird. We reached the next stop when I could finally move my hands. I immediately went for my pockets to notice my phone was missing. I push and turn around forcefully to see the uncle behind me missing as well. He must have got down on the stop. Before I could shout, I noticed my waist belt was missing and my pants start to slide down from my waist as it was unbuttoned and unzipped. My shirt buttons were also unbuttoned. I was embarrassed and quickly picked it up before people noticed and put it back on and tried to move to the conductor to stop the bus. But I fell down. My shoelaces were also tied together when I looked at my feet. Then noticed my Ultra watch had also been taken away from my wrist. Must have happened when my hands got locked onto the support bar earlier. I immediately rushed to the conductor to stop the bus, but by then it was too late. I have filed a lost report with police, but they told it's highly unlikely to get my phone and watch back. The report will only safeguard from misuse of phone. Just check your valuables before and after boarding the bus, and if possible, must keep them inside your chained bag. Until today, I used to think naively it was impossible that someone will steal my valuables from my pocket, but these thieves really know their stuff. TLDR, lost my focus on a packed, crowded bus, got pickpocketed, stripped, and lost $2,300 worth of stuff, without even noticing.